ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narnarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu avadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, the son of Drona Pranished, text number 23. Adyah Purushah Sakshat Tvam Adya Purusha Sakshat Ishvaraha Prakritehi Paraha Ishvaraha Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani Kaivalye Stita Atmani Tvam Adya Purusha Sakshat Ishvara Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani Tvam Adya Purusha Sakshat Ishvara Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani Tvam Adya Purusha Sakshat Ishvara Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani
Tvamadya Purusha Sakshat Ishvaraha Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani
Tvamadya Purusha Sakshat Ishvaraha Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani Tvamadya Purusha Sakshat Ishvara Prakrite Paraha Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya Kaivalye Stita Atmani Tvamadya Purusha Sakshat Ishvara Prakrite Paraha Chitshaktya
Mayam Yudasya Chitshaktya
Kaivalye Stita Atmani
Kaivalye Stita Atmani
त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात्
त्वमाद्य
ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायं व्युदस्य चिच्चत्य कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायं व्युदस्य चिच्चत्य कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायां व्युदस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायास्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
मामाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः माया व्यूढस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्य स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः तस्य चित्शक्त्या त्वमाद्यः पुरुषः साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
ईश्वर प्रकृते परः व्युढस्य चित्शक्त्या त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायां व्युढस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
त्वमादाय पुरुष साक्षात्
ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायां व्युढस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि ऑनलाइन
पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः
मायां व्युढस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायां व्युढस्य चित्शक्त्या कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
त्वमाद्य पुरुष साक्षात्
ईश्वर प्रकृते परः
ईश्वरे प्रकृते परः
विदस्य सत्या
मायामृतस्य चित्सत्य
कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुषः साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायामृतस्य चित्सत्य कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि त्वमाद्य पुरुषः साक्षात् ईश्वर प्रकृते परः मायामृतस्य चित्सत्य कैवल्ये स्थित आत्मनि
What meaning? From Adyaha, you are the original. Purushaha, enjoying personality. Sakshat, directly. Ishwaraha,
ईश्वरः
the controller.
controller
Takritehe, of material nature. Paraha, transcendental.
transcendent
Mayam,
Maya
the material energy.
the material energy
Yudasya,
Yudasya
one who has thrown aside.
one who is thrown aside
Chit Shaktya,
Chidsatya
by dint of internal potency.
by dint of internal potency
Kaivalye,
Kaivalye
in pure eternal knowledge and bliss.
pure eternal knowledge and bliss
Sthitaha,
Sthitaha
placed.
placed
Atmani,
Atmani
own self.
own self
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. You are the original personality of Godhead who expands himself all over the creation and is transcendental to material energy. You have cast away the effects of the material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You are always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge. Translation with repetition. You are the original personality of Godhead
you are the original personality of God
who expands himself
who expands himself
all over the creations
all over the creations
and is transcendental to material energy.
it is transcendental to material energy
You have cast away
you have cast away
the effects of the material energy
the effects of the material energy
by dint of your spiritual potency.
by dint of your spiritual potency
You are always
you are always
situated in eternal bliss
situated in eternal bliss
and transcendental knowledge.
and transcendental knowledge.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord states in the Bhagavad Gita that one who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord can get release from the clutches of nations. Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya, material existence, is just like darkness. Wherever there is the light of the sun, darkness or ignorance at once vanishes. The best means to get out of the world of ignorance is suggested here. The Lord is addressed herein as the original personality of Godhead. From him, all other personalities of Godhead expand. The all-pervasive Lord Vishnu is Lord Krishna's plenary portion or expansion. The Lord expands himself in innumerable forms of Godhead and living beings, along with his different energies. But Sri Krishna is the original, primeval Lord from whom everything emanates. The all-pervasive feature of the Lord experienced within the manifested world is also a partial representation of the Lord. Paramatma, therefore, is included within him. He is the absolute personality of Godhead. He has nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material manifestation because he is far above the material creation. Darkness is a perverse representation of the sun, and therefore the existence of darkness depends on the existence of the sun. But in the sun proper, there is no trace of darkness. As the sun is full of light only, similarly, the absolute personality of Godhead, beyond the material existence, is full of bliss. He is not only full of bliss, but also full of transcendental variegatedness. transcendence is not at all static, but full of dynamic variegativeness. He is distinct from the material nature, which is complicated by the three modes of material nature. He is Parama, or the chief. Therefore, he is absolute. He has manifold energies, and through his diverse energies, he creates, manifests, maintains, and destroys the material world. In his own abode, however, everything is eternal and absolute. The world is not conducted by the energies or powerful agents by themselves, but by the potent, all-powerful with all energies. Thus ends the Transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnanajnanashulakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are the 7th chapter of first canto Srimad Bhagavatam, and in this section we are saying Arjuna is speaking, and he is addressing the Lord. And as we saw in the previous verse, how feelingly he was addressing the Lord, Krishna Krishna Mahabhavu. So continuing those prayers, Arjuna is also continuing another prayer here, and in this prayer he is glorifying the Supreme Lord. So this is the condition of a pure devotee of the Lord, that in all circumstances one is always surrendered to the Supreme Lord. So this is one characteristic that all pure devotees carry, is that in either the gain or loss, they are always surrendered. Usually people try to surrender when there is some pain, there's some suffering, then they say, Lord, please help me, please save me. But it is not the case with the Pandavas and Kunti Maharani. They were always surrendered to the Lord. And they were always glorifying the Supreme Lord. Whether the Lord put them in difficulties, or Lord gave them the best, the highest kingdom, or any material gain. In all circumstances, they were glorifying the Lord. And here is another prayer which again shows the great qualities of a pure devotee, that they realize the greatness of the Supreme Lord. And they beautifully express the wonderful attributes and glories of the Supreme Lord. And one common thing that we'll see is that when we look at all the great devotees of the Lord, we will see similar statements coming out, if you carefully observe, but in a different way. But they're all pointing out the wonderful characteristics of the Lord. And we will also see how this prayer is also similar to some of the prayers that Kunti Maharani has offered. So in this way, it is very important to recognize that the surrender of the pure devotee is something very important to pay attention when we are seeing these beautiful prayers. And in this beautiful verse, Arjuna is stating the wonderful qualities of the Lord, beginning with Tvam Adyaha. So you are the original. The original means the first. So anything that comes after that we usually call copy of something. But the first one, which is the original one, that is the first, before which there is nothing that existed of that kind. So Arjuna is saying, you are the first, you are the original. But what kind of original? He is Purusha. He is the enjoying personality. Therefore, we see again and again in different places, Prabhupada translates the original personality of Godhead, Tvamadya Purushaha. So it is from these words that Prabhupada is picking up those phrases, the original personality of Godhead. So Purushaha means the enjoying personality. As we know, Prabhupada explains in various places, Purushaha means the enjoyer, the controller. And Prakriti means which is to be enjoyed or which is to be controlled. Unfortunately, in this modern world, there is a tendency for everyone to become more and more Purusha. But Prabhupada says that one cannot artificially become Purusha. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of a person wearing a dress of a man wearing a dress of women does not mean that the man has become woman. Nor a woman wearing the dress of a man means that the woman becomes a man. No. So this artificially one may try to become Purusha, but in reality, there is only one Purusha. That's what all the Vedic literature say. And that Purusha is being addressed here. And Arjuna knew exactly who is that Purusha, who is that Supreme Personality, who is that person who is the enjoyer of everything. And therefore he's saying, Tvamadya Purusha Sakshat. And he's directly addressing the Lord, affirming that Supreme enjoyer, the original personality who is present in front of me. And furthermore, he is giving characteristics of the Lord that Ishvaraha is the supreme controller. As we see in Prabhupada states that there are so many controllers. And the living entities are minute controllers, but we are not the supreme controllers. Similarly, there are demigods. There are different politicians. They may control a little more than others, but no one can say that they are the real controllers. And neither they are actually anyone is fully freed from the clutches of material nature. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord, either through the influence of the material energy or directly by the control of the Lord. Therefore, no one can really claim oneself to be the real controller. And here, the Lord is being addressed as Ishvara, or actually, Prabhupada had said controller, but as we know in Brahma Samhita, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha, where Brahma is more explicitly stating he is not just the Ishvara, but the Parama Ishvara. And here, he is also, in other words, you could think that he is the controller of the material nature, Ishvara Prakriti. And he is not only the controller of the material nature or the energy, but he is also transcendental to the material energy, Paraha. So this is very unique. He is not only influencing or controlling the material energy, but he is unaffected by the material energy. And why is that so? Mayam Yudasya Chit Shaktya. Because he is spiritual potency, his internal potency, Chit Shaktya. Because the Lord possesses, he is all spiritual. He is not at all affected by any of these material qualities. And because of his spiritual potency, Prabhupada states that one who has thrown aside the material energy, that means he is not influenced by any of this material energy. And furthermore, Arjuna is stating here that Kaivalya Sita Atmani, that the Lord is always in pure eternal knowledge and bliss. We are not always in knowledge or bliss. The Lord is always placed in his real self. His real self is full of knowledge and full of bliss. And it is that Lord that Arjuna is addressing here. So, as we see that a similar prayer is also offered by Kunti Maharani, who says, Kunti Uvacha, Namaste Purusham Tvadyam. Here again you can see Tvadyam Purusham. Those are the similar words which again Arjuna is referring here. And Kunti Maharani is offering obeisances to that Supreme Lord who is the original personality of Godhead. And as we see, although the living entities are also transcendental, but they do not have this quality of being original. They're not the first. They are dependent upon the existence of the Supreme Lord, without whom one cannot claim to exist. So, Namasya Purusham Tvadyam, Ishwaram Prakriti Param. So, again, we see this similar word that is used by Kunti Maharani, Ishwaram Prakriti Param, that the Lord is actually the controller of this material energy and is also aloof from the influence of the material energy. And further, she goes on to explain Alaksham Sarva Bhutanam Antar Bhagiravasthitam, that although he is present everywhere, both inside and outside, one cannot see it. One cannot see him. And then she goes on to explain why one is not able to see him. What is the reason that one, although he is present everywhere, even in today's verse, we see Prabhupada translates in the purport, in the translation, that who expands himself all over the creations. So the Lord here is being described to be present all over his creation. Yet we are unable to see him. Why is that? So Kunti Maharani also explains in our very next verse what is the reason why people are unable to see the Lord. And so these are very important fundamental principles that one must recognize about the supremacy of the Lord. So just to further understand the original personality of Godhead, again and again, the Vedic scriptures in various places, it is mentioned that the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we see another verse which is often quoted by Srila Prabhupada and also by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself to state that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original personality of Godhead. The verse is Ete Cham Shakala Pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indradi Vyakulam Lokam Hridayanti Yuge Yuge. So Ete Cham Shakala Pumsa. So again, you can see that there are many different expansions of the Lord. Some are direct expansions and some are indirect expansions of the Lord. But no one is said to be Bhagavan Swayam. No one is said to be the original person. But here, Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. But here it is said, but although there are so many incarnations, either direct or indirect, but of all of them, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. And so similarly in Brahma Samhita, Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha. So in this way, we can see that time and again in the Vedic literatures, Sri Krishna is actually addressed as the original personality of Godhead by all the realized devotees. One can again and again see in the prayers of the demigods offering in the home of Mother Devaki and in all the prayers of Akrura, even the wives of Kaliya serpent, and so on and so forth. In all the prayers, one common thing is that everyone recognizes that Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. And he possesses all the six opulences in full, in completeness. And no one possesses any quality more than him. He possesses all qualities in full. And therefore, he is considered to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this understanding can be seen in all the devotees of the Lord. They recognize. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita also we see in various places the Lord himself saying, Matta Parataram Nanyat. There is no one superior, there is no superior truth beyond me. Similarly, Aham Hi Adir Devanam. So in this way we can see that again and again the Lord is mentioning he is the original personality of Godhead. But yet people get confused. Sometimes they think that there are so many gods, they're all equal. It is not true. Just like yesterday also we had some visitors who were saying, I do sometimes this mantra, sometimes that mantra, and sometimes some other worship. So in this way, people have no clarity. But the Vedic scriptures are so clear that they explain who is the original personality of Godhead, and they further explain this beautifully, that in this world there are two principles operating. One principle is the origin or shelter of everything. The other principle is deduced from this original principle. So in the Vedic scriptures, there is a clear distinction, especially Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and in Chaitanya Charitamrita, these Vaishnava literatures, we can clearly see that there are two distinguishing principles. One, the origin of everything, and everything else which is deduced from the origin. And the supreme truth is the shelter of all manifestations and is called Ashraya. So there is one principle which is from whom everything else is coming out and who is the source of everything. And that principle is known as Ashraya. And everything else is under the control of Ashraya Tattva. And therefore is known as Ashrita, or subordinate corollaries and reactions. So in this material world, we take shelter of all that is Ashrita, which is a byproduct or a product of that supreme Ashraya, or the supreme truth, the supreme Lord. So we take shelter of various temporary things like money, some sort of insurance, some sort of medical health, and so on and so forth. We believe that this doctors, this money, this economic conditions, and so on and so forth will actually save us. By taking shelter of them, we will find, we will be saved. But that is not what the pure devotees do. Pure devotees always take shelter of the Ashraya, the supreme original personality of Godhead. In all circumstances, they're firmly fixed in taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. So the Srimad Bhagavatam indicates that everything is sheltered by Krishna, directly and indirectly. Consequently, perfect knowledge can be had only by analytical study of Krishna. So if one understands that everything in this cosmic creation is dependent on the Supreme Lord, the Ashraya Tattva, and all other things are manifestation of his energy. So some are directly his expansions, the Vishnu Tattvas, some are the demigods, and some are living entities. But he is the original personality of Godhead. And anyone who understands that eventually all things are sheltered by him. And therefore, if I'm intelligent, I must take the supreme shelter. Why should I take shelter of someone else? So this is a constant theme of Srimad Bhagavatam, to describe who is that original personality of Godhead and how one should take shelter of the original personality of Godhead. And all the devotees mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam clearly, explicitly demonstrate this quality of taking shelter of the original personality of Godhead. Some in complete pureness, some partially motivated by other things, but the surrender, taking shelter to original personality of Godhead, is a constant theme that we see throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. Even in Bhagavad Gita, where we see Arjuna was perplexed. What should I do? What I should not do? And as soon as he got perplexed, he immediately took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a wonderful quality. This is the beginning quality one must possess. So sometimes people ask, how do I understand God? So when they say that it is very confusing, because how do I understand this at all? Like sometimes people say, like the other day, one of the students was mentioning, Buddha's philosophy is nice because he's making atheists to come, not to accept the God directly, but he's saying, don't do something negative. So he's just bringing them one step above. So it looks nice. Because it is quite often difficult for one to understand who is that Supreme Lord. Just like Kunti Maharani is saying that there is a curtain of Maya, and that is veiling our vision to see the Supreme Lord, although it's present everywhere. So it is the three common processes by which people try to understand the Lord. One is by speculation. By speculation, one may go on speculating for years and years and years and years, yet they cannot actually understand the original personality of Godhead. One can maybe to the maximum extent understand the Brahman aspect of the Supreme Lord, but not the original person, Bhagavan. Similarly, the mystics may go on doing various yoga systems. Despite their great austerities and their great endeavors, they can also, to a degree, understand the Paramatma feature of the Lord. But to understand the Bhagavan feature of the Lord, one has to take to the devotional service. It is not by speculation that one can understand the Lord. It is not possible. It is said that only by the prasada leshanugrahita, so only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord one can understand him. So this knowledge of understanding the Supreme Lord is the knowledge of revelation. It is not that I can capture the Supreme Lord by my endeavors. The Lord has to reveal himself. And what is the reason? Why would he reveal to someone and why would he not reveal to someone? Atas Shri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahya bindre sevan mukhe jivado swam smriti devata. So because he is beyond alaksham, he is beyond my senses, he is adokshaja, he is beyond my sense capabilities to see him, to understand him. So he is not perceptible to my senses. Yet he can be understood very easily if one renders devotional service, starting with the tongue. So tongue, as Prabhupada says, has two functions: to chant and to take Krishna Prasada. So this is another instruction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Yare Dekho Tare Kaho Krishna Upadesh. So we can chant our prescribed number of rounds for 2 hours, and rest of the time is also our tongue is engaged in vibrating something or the other. So if we don't utilize our tongue to vibrate the glories of the Lord, to inform others about the glories of Krishna, then our tongue will be engaged in talking about something mundane. And as we engage our talking in mundane, our thoughts, our activities will be also driven by those kind of tendencies of doing something mundane. So if we want to understand God, who is the original personality of God, and if you want to take shelter of him, we have to take to the bona fide process that is given. And if anyone takes to this bona fide process, then one becomes a recipient of the favor of the Lord. What all these processes are making us, why are we following all these processes? Because we are so rebellious of the Supreme Lord that we do not want to surrender to the Supreme Lord. Because we do not want to surrender unto the Lord, we do not receive the favor of the Lord. But when we follow the instructions of the Mahajanas, the pure devotees of the Lord, who have traversed this path, who are perfected, who are perfectly situated in the constitutional position of rendering continuous devotional service, loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, they have chopped out this plan for us as what we should do, how much we should do, how we should mold our entire life. Although Prabhupada gave us a program to chant for 2 hours and morning program, but our life is meant to be completely dedicated to please the spiritual master. It is not the rest of the time we do something else. The center of our life should be to please Guru and Krishna. Well, that is made, one makes quick progress in spiritual life. Yasya deve para bhakti, tata yatha deve tatha guru. Tasyete katita hi akta prakashante mahatmana. So all the difficult secrets or the revelations of the Vedic literatures become easy to understand if we worship spiritual master, the Lord, and with full faith. This is very important. With full faith, if you are also engaged in serving the spiritual master as we serve the Supreme Lord and get the favor of the spiritual master, then all the complexities of life will very quickly vanish. Just like yesterday, the visitor was asking, how do I overcome the complexities of life? It is not possible to overcome the complexities of life without serving and getting the favor of the spiritual master. Just like here it is said that you have cast away the effects of material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. Lord is so powerful, all powerful, that he can cast away, he can just push aside, just like something going away from the shore, or to push it aside onto the shore. So similarly, the material energy is pushed aside, the effects of material energy by dint of the spiritual potency of the Lord. Similarly, the spiritual potency of a pure devotee of the Lord, one can overcome all the material complexities of life. Therefore, to sincerely always engage with faith, Prabhupada says two parallel tracks, Guru and Krishna. So if one is doing nice service, Guru and Krishna, one must introspect. Am I really leading my life to please spiritual master? Or am I doing a few other things which are meant for something else? If I'm some other motivation, some other reasons, except for some time, all of the time I'm doing something else, that means I'm not completely pleasing my spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada has given so much wonderful knowledge that even our other activities can be made spiritual, provided we take guidance from the spiritual master and his representatives as how we should execute our duties, which duties we must execute. When we become more eager to serve him, then all our activities can become spiritualized by taking instructions from the spiritual master and his representatives. So when that becomes spiritualized, when our activities become spiritualized, then by that spiritual potency, the material complexities of life we can cast away. Otherwise, the complexities of material life one cannot come out. And Prabhupada, in the very beginning of the purport, talks about the Lord states in the Bhagavad Gita that one who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord can get released from the clutches of nations. So the word nations is again and again used in all places by Srila Prabhupada, and this is a very important word to understand. Nations means ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of the constant struggles that we undergo in material existence. Because we are so much conditioned, sometimes we do not recognize that there are perpetual miseries in this material existence. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of a person who is not in healthy condition. One who is not in healthy condition, he is, sometimes the body is paining, the hand is paining, sometimes mind is paining. There are different kinds of pain one is undergoing. But someone who is intelligent, he recognizes that there is something is not all right, and I must take guidance of an expert physician. So we need expert physician to overcome the unhealthy state of living, Similarly, all the unhealthy state of living can be gross, easy to understand, sometimes subtle, but the clutches of nations or the uh, unhealthy state of being in ignorance is such a state that it is such a state where one is ignorant of one's ignorance. That is even more troublesome. And therefore, time and again, the Lord, being all merciful, comes down himself or sends his pure devotees, so that we can come out of these nations, this ignorance that we are completely unaware of, that I am undergoing this suffering time and again, and I have no way to come out. And therefore, this nations is also compared as an ocean, Bhavasagara. Param Param Jigmishor Bhavasagarasya. So Bhavasagarasya. So this material existence itself is compared to an ocean of nations. In an ocean, one may want to come out of the ocean, but it's so huge, how can one swim? An ocean is not the place where we can live comfortably. In land, we can sit. Not in all land, like this is a cold place, but in a place which is decent place where the weather is good, one can still remain peaceful. But in an ocean where there is constant flux of waves which are trying to submerge one, there is a constant struggle that one has to undergo. It is so troublesome to stay afloat on the ocean. Therefore, everyone succumbs to the waves of ocean. And therefore, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Ainanda Tanuja Tidkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhava Ambudao. So this material existence, this ocean of material existence, this ocean of nations is very, very hard to cross over. We are not even aware of the degree of nations or the ignorance that we carry with us. And therefore, we get cheated by so many people. And we sometimes even don't last in our devotional service. But one quality Srila Prabhupada says in other places is that sincerity of purpose. If one is sincere in purpose without trying to be deceptive in the service, in the devotional service to the spiritual master and the Lord, then by their mercy, one will be again pulled back into devotional service, even if there is a minor fault, a minor lapse. The sincerity of purpose, Prabhupada in a couple of places stresses upon this point, that sincerity of purpose, if it is there, then Krishna and the spiritual master, they will not forget the devotional service that is rendered by an individual, and they will, by their mercy, bring them back. And Prabhupada, when some of the disciples went back, and when they came back, Prabhupada said this famously, that once one has come to me, I will never leave him. So this is the greatness. This is the such wonderful mercy incarnations are the spiritual masters Srila Prabhupada and Sri Gauranitai, that they are so kind that if some or the other we sincerely take shelter of them, we pray to be engaged in their service, and we ask them that please keep us at your lotus feet, please engage us in some service. And Prabhupada says this should be the prayer. And this is what the Hare Krishna Mahamantra prayer is also. That I cannot come out of this material world by my own ability. But if by Lord's mercy, Kripaya, if there's Lord's mercy, then I can easily come out of this material existence. And how do I get the mercy? So I pray, O Krishna, O Srimati Radharani, O Rama, please engage me in your service. So when we ask for the service, by their mercy, when they engage us in the service, it is then that we are released from these clutches of nations. Unless we are not engaged in their service, we are influenced by these three modes of material nature. We are tightly in the grip of ignorance. So much so that we have no idea that we are committing so many activities which has so many detrimental consequences. Prabhupada says that what is the cause of our suffering? The cause is sinful reactions. And why are we committing sinful reactions? Because of ignorance. Because we are not knowledgeable. We are trying to do something, but that has so many complications. And because of ignorance, we have so many desires. So many material desires because of ignorance. And those desires, when they become strong, we are not willing to listen to anyone. This is my desire. I want this to be achieved. How can you stop me? Very agitated. Because of ignorance. So, in this way, a living entity, because of ignorance, developing strong ignorant desires, performing various kinds of ugra karma, working too hard, like an ass, as a symbol of stupidity, Prabhupada says. Simply working hard, not knowing what is the purpose for which I'm working. There is no understanding of what is the purpose. Why am I working so hard? That is another symptom of nations, ignorance. The whole material, Prabhupada says in one place that almost 75% of the people in Kali Yuga are in ignorance. Maybe some 10-15% Prabhupada says, maybe 15% or so in some fashion, and maybe a few 5% or so in Satvaguna. So deep ignorance. And that ignorance consumes one. Similarly, passion, which is not directed, which is not guided, also leads to unwanted miseries. It is not a source of freedom, although it is better than ignorance. But to come to the state of knowledge, that requires the spiritual path laid by great devotees, by the acharyas, by Srila Prabhupada. And therefore, Prabhupada is writing here, Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya, or material existence, is just like darkness. So as soon as we bring Krishna into our life, as soon as we make Krishna the center of our whole life, then the effects of the material existence, of material energy, as it is said, will be cast away. Samashitaye padapallava plavam. So if one takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then this ocean of nations becomes like this water in a hoofprint, calf's hoofprint. Prabhupada again and again gives this example, and he always states that when I was in India, when I was in Vrindavan, in the winters, in the rainy season, when the ground is filled with water, the calves would walk and they would create small hoofprints, calf hoofprints filled with water. And it is so easy, the children would jump and cross sometimes. It is so easy that even a child can cross over the calf's hoofprint. The ocean, one can cross. So as soon as we bring Krishna into our life, then this affects so much complexities of material existence. So much friction, so much confusion, so much struggle, so much, especially Kali Yuga, means fight, disturbance. At once, they will go away. So sometimes we wonder, there are so many problems, what should we do? The process is to bring Krishna in the center by doing Nama Sankirtana. The more we do Nama Sankirtana, that's the easiest way to dispel all ignorances, all miseries, all distresses that we are carrying in our heart. Wherever there is the light of the sun, darkness or ignorance at once vanishes. As soon as the sun rises, there is no darkness. Similarly, as soon as Krishna is present, there is no miserable condition. It's like we see how when Yudhishthira Maharaj was saying about the Lord's presence, he was saying how all the lands are full with all the grains, there is enough milk, everything is in abundance. Even materially, everything was so good. So similarly, when the Lord is brought in the center, when the Bhagavata Katha is heard, discussed, Nama Sankirtana is done, the Lord is present. And by that, all our darkness or ignorance or miseries or different kinds of anxieties at once vanquish. And the best method, the best means to get out of the world of ignorance is suggested here. So we have to take shelter of the Lord. And shelter means, especially in this age, take shelter of the holy name of the Lord. And under the guidance of a pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, when that is done, we can understand the glories of the Supreme Lord. We can understand who is that Ashraya Tattva, how we should take shelter of him, and how by doing that, we come out of the nations and all the effects of nations, all the effects of ignorance at once are vanquished. And Prabhupada is writing that at once vanishes. So it should be our constant endeavor in the association of devotees. We become more and more serious in our Krishna consciousness. As soon as we become more and more Krishna consciousness, then the material problems, the effects of the material problems will not affect us. Otherwise, the effects of material problems will constantly burn our heart, trouble our heart. So this is another beautiful play where Arjuna is also stating that the Lord is full of transcendental knowledge and bliss. So Krishna is a reservoir of all pleasure. So we bring Krishna into our life also becomes more and more happier and joyful. So these are some points from today's lecture. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisance to our Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please explain. Please.
So you mentioned that some people have desires that are so strong, that they're so determined that no matter what, no matter what anyone says, no matter what you tell me to do, I will try to achieve this. So generally, especially growing up in America, that type of determination when you want to achieve something of value in the world is actually of a positive quality. So I'm wondering if you can confirm with me where exactly the problem is with having that type of determination. Is it the problem that it's a material desire that you're determined to achieve? If you have determination for perhaps a spiritual desire or a service that you've been assigned by an authority, then it turns positive. I'm just looking for some clarification there. Thank you.
Yes, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. Yes, so the base tendency is that a living entity possesses in this material world is of dominance, is of to control. And the idea of surrender is very, very difficult because for various reasons. Surrender is difficult because one is of one's own false ego. Another is also because one does not see a perfect person to whom one should surrender. And therefore, one thinks, because I should not surrender, I should take shelter of my mind. I should take shelter of what desires that I possess. But one does not, in one's own limited experience and knowledge, one may not be able to see what is the end purpose that I'm going to achieve through all my determination. Because if one were to get out of this material existence, one needs the favor of the spiritual master and the Lord. Without that mercy, without that favor, I may get something by my endeavors, but I will not get the real thing, that is freedom from the material existence. If I really want a real thing, my real purpose to be achieved, then I should first understand what is that real purpose that I want to achieve. Real purpose is to re-establish my relationship with Krishna, to become Krishna conscious. So if one is determined in that direction, it's well and good. But by nature, the living entity is determined even to become Krishna conscious. We need to take shelter of the path that is laid out by the Mahajanas, the Acharyas, the spiritual master. Without that, we may endeavor in our spiritual life, just like, we may want to take a medicine. And I may be determined to take a medicine. But if it is not guided by a physician, then I may not know how much to take, when to take. And the so-called the process of taking medicine can be harmful to my own self. So, therefore, we must recognize that I'm not full in knowledge. Therefore, this idea, it is not an imposition, pariprasnena. So, one can humbly request and ask a question. Prabhu, I don't understand. Why do you ask me to do this? I feel to do this. Can you please guide me? Can you help me understand what is your reasoning? I am unable to understand. So, it is very important to learn to hear. We often fail to hear others because we're so much hearing our own voice. But the simple method of trying to hear what my authority wants me to do, just to go out and hear, even if one may have a different determined opinion of to do something else. But the first thing is to hear. And then, in a humble way, if one is not able to understand the reasoning behind it, question, Prabhu, this is my understanding. Can you, even before saying my understanding, Prabhu, can you please help me understand why are you saying this? And then one should again contemplate on what is being said, why is it being said, but there must be a reason why devotee is saying something. And then, if still one has got doubt, one should still inquire and pray to the Lord and the spiritual master to please guide. And we will see, when we follow this process of hearing carefully, the Lord is, the spiritual master is very pleased and the guidance, so do the authorities. They're always willing good for us. So when we increase this ability to hear and ask right questions in humility, then our determination will be rightly directed to the right extent at the right time in the places where it should go, and we do much more better than otherwise. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you so much.
There are no questions or comments. We'll stop here. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.